What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? We're gonna wait for some of y'all to come in because there's a couple of things going on. One, I have to send a good friend of mine. I don't know why this is acting up. I got to send a good friend of mine the link to this. That's one. And two, I want to take some time before we get into what we're getting into to celebrate the life of someone who is very close to all of us. You know what I'm saying? So right now, what I'm trying to do, well, I'm not trying. Right now, what I'm doing is making sure I get this link to Ms. Veronica Jackson. And then we're going to talk about a couple of things for this evening's show. You know what I'm saying? And I got it to Brother Marquise. Okay, so again, I want to wait for some folks to come in. I'm going to check Instagram to see who's rocking with us. Instagram is weird. I'll tell you that right now. But all right, we'll figure it out. But hey, young Don, how you doing? Don rocks with us every weekend, every Sunday. He plays music with my youngsters. And there's one of my youngsters right there. So they all play music together. They've done a lot of performing together in Bowling Green and Butler County here in Kentucky. So it's always a pleasure to see the Elmores. And young Don, I want to take time to, hey, good evening, Brother Brock. Good evening, Libby Warner. So I'm gonna try to go between all of these streaming platforms to make sure that I can see what y'all are saying. And if I don't respond to you all, it doesn't mean I'm ignoring you. I may not have seen it because it's on. Remember, if you're new, Instagram does not communicate with my feed the way Facebook and YouTube does. So I have to go back and forth, okay? So today's show, before I get to anything, today's show is part 2 of the blues narrative, migration memory and the modern blues. And we're going to be discussing, and I'm going to give you an update for those who was not with me last week. But before we do that, I have to really take time to honor another bluesman who's transcended, someone who meant so much to our community as a musician, as an artist, because he painted as well, and he drew as my brother Marquis said, as a conscious brother at that. Mr. Larry Scott Dixon, aka Dr. Dixon, PhD, the blues physician. And I've known this brother for a long time. And it was I don't know if he was born in '66. This is what I took from his Facebook page. I need to find out. So if this is the wrong information, please someone give the right information. I remember when I would talk to Brother Dixon, And he would be like, Jack, PhD, the blues physician. It's Dr. Dixon, PhD, the blues physician. But he was really serious about the blues. He was serious about Black culture, blues people. And he was serious about art. And he's going to be missed tremendously. I want to share him performing. I'm going to share a couple of performances by him before we get into, or maybe throughout, as we speak about the blues narrative, because Dr. Dixon, PhD blues physician, is actually part of the blues narrative. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being the case, we jumped the gun there. With that being the case, this is what we want to play first.
Baby, I didn't know you could chicken scratch. So I can hear some of the keys. Come on,
So, luckily, my good friend, Miss Veronica Jackson, America's folk blues singer. See, this is a fraternity and a sorority. This is a family. We the blues people. And we played in blues, and we lived in blues. And my dear friend and good sister, Miss Veronica Jackson, yet again I'll say, AKA America's folk and blues singer, has come to the rescue and corrected me. So Dr. Dixon's career starts in 1966, which is why it says Atlanta blues legend, since 1966. However, he was born September 9th, 1947. Okay? So, oh boy, he's such a good brother. We're going to stop sharing that. I want to get one more piece in there for you. This is a short piece, or maybe a longer piece, and then we're going to start the show up. And when I say start the show up, the actual what we talking about. Let's try this one. We're going to try this one first. You know why? Because it's Dr. Dixon, baby. And we celebrating his life before I just start talking about the blues narrative. Remember, Dr. Dixon is part of the blues narrative. Let's not forget that.
These blues. Friday, baby. What is it? TGIF? Y'all be safe out there now. Baby, what you got to say for yourself? I said, baby, what you got to say for yourself? You know, you told me to meet you at the club. Everybody told me you left with somebody else. What's that about? I'm looking for you day and night. Why I got to do that? That just ain't right, baby. Mama, what you got to say for yourself?
Oh boy, I did not want to stop it. That is a brother in the blues, and he passed today. To my understanding, what I learned of this today from his daughter-in-law, and I know he was very proud of his family. So this is a big loss for his family first, right? And the blues world, arts, culture, and the blues people. Sleep well, good brother. You did a tremendous job with the blues, and everything else you did. And we'll definitely, I'll probably play one more later, but we're gonna get into this show, and I'm gonna show Brother Walter, because that was the last person that I spoke about last week. Actually, no, we started with Mr. Walter, then we started talking about Greenwood. I don't know if I need to remind y'all about Greenwood. See if I could find it real quick, and I may. Yep, it was called What Really Happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I played an excerpt of that last week, which we may get a little bit into that tonight. And along with that, my brother, Mr. Walto, I played a, how can I say this? A snippet of our interview, which sets off the blues narrative. And, you know, I want to go into that. You know what I'm saying? And I want to talk about the blues narrative. It was very important for me to start this week and last week off when it comes to this information, playing labor songs, right? Because if you remember last week, I was discussing the blues narratives juxtaposed the blues epistemology by Dr. Clyde Woods. The book is right here. I'll show it to y'all. Is it here or upstairs? No, the book is right here. It's a book that I've been reading for several reasons. One is for, I'm in a PhD program. So now, with that being said, right, it is very important to hear work songs because labor and plantation life, or should I say the plantation, wait, let me let y'all look at me for a minute. Labor, sometimes it has a mind of its own, but labor and the plantation industry not only informs the blues and the blues people, and when I say informs us as it pertains to the blues and as it pertains to the blues people, labor and the plantation industry or industrial complex, which is probably one of the first industrial complexes, and it had, I would say, the longest lasting effects on us. So the prison industrial complex is birthed from the plantation complex, because when we talk about the prison industrial complex and we talk about the military complex, industrial complex, and these things that in the realm of eras not so far off, right? These ideas come from the plantation industry. Okay? So now, when it comes to work and prison songs, work songs, labor disputes, Black folk, right? Southern Black folk, another term, Afro-Indigenous, Indian, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Muskegee, did I say it right? Muskegee, which is a language, right? Amongst other things, right? What I'm trying to do is hit all African American, right? I'm trying to hit all these titles. You understand? Labor songs. Now, mind you, when it comes to our counterparts and neighbors, the poor white community, it was called labor songs. But when it came to the Black American community, it was called work songs and prison songs, okay? But both groups of people, these songs spoke about an intense labor disputes, an intense land disputes, okay? So it's very important for me when we're discussing the blues and the blues people, and particularly the blues narrative, to start with what we know as work songs. Yes, I'm showing cotton, and I'm showing folk picking cotton because that has a lot to do with what we're talking about, right? 25,000 year cycle, peace to you, peace to you. Welcome all who has just joined. We were celebrating the life of Larry Dixon, aka Dr. Dixon, BHD, the blues physician. Now we're getting into the show, and I will be playing probably later on another excerpt from Brother Dixon. And the show, again, is the Blues Narrative Part 2, Migration, Memory, and the Modern Blues. Last week, I played an excerpt. Now, for those who have been listening already to today's episode, I'm just reiterating this as I go over to those who just joined us, okay? Last week, I played an excerpt from the first, if I'm not mistaken, Blues Narrative interview, which was with Mr. Walter Wallace, Seminole, that lives in Oklahoma. I was explaining why I chose to use a work song to start the blues narrative. And if you want to understand the different types of Black traditional music that's birthed from slave seculars and the gospel and the blues and all these things, you can go through the catalog of these shows that actually started in February, okay? So now in last week, I introduced the idea of the blues narrative, the children of the Great Migration, okay? We traced the journey of Black families leaving the Jim Crow South. Now, when I say we traced the journey, that was the intention. I spoke about it. I couldn't get too deep into it because tornado sirens and alarms was going on, okay? But I'll speak a little bit about that even more. Maybe not tonight, or maybe tonight I will share some books. Maybe not in this feed, but I'll post them because there are books that can help you understand this. And if you're blessed to have grandparents, great grandparents, parents, aunties, and uncles alive, talk to them. Okay. So so again, the children of the Great Migration is what the blues narrative is predicated on. Okay. So now and I'll go back to that picture and others in a minute. But I don't know if I played Chief Warhorse last week. We're going to play Chief Warhorse tonight. We're going to play Mrs. I want to call her Dr. Nashima Harvey. I'm going to read an excerpt of Brother Marquise Knox, who was part of the Blues Narrative interviews. Excuse me. I'm also going to play a snippet of when I interviewed Troy Pearley, my brother. And there's quite a few other people that have been interviewed and will be interviewed in this series. So again, just to recap, the blues narrative in my lofty, as my wife would say, ambitious way, is taking the baton from the slave narrative, the WPA Slave Narratives. So I explained that last week, so you can go back to see it, but I'll just say quickly, it over 2,000 interviews of those born into slavery or born out of slavery, meaning the last generation during or right after emancipation. And a lot of these interviews, I think from the 20s or the 30s to 40s, late 40s, right? So my interviews, and when I say mine, of course, I'm not going to be able to do them all. I collaborate with folk. We're going to get as many as possible. I look for at least minimum 2,000 to match the slave narrative. We're doing the blues narrative because the blues people were not enslaved. Blues is a free music. And it looks at the generations born from 1945 to 2004. I think that's a good amount of generations, right? So if you look at it, it starts from my grandparents as adults, the birth of my parents, right? And when I look at the blues, I always look at it through the generations and births of my grandparents starting first. So when I look at the blues narrative, I equate that to the birth of my parents, both of them, because my grandparents were part of the migration. So the children of the migration, which even though we know the migration starts before 1914, but for American history purposes, and most people equate the term the Great Migration to 1914, 1916, to the 1945 to 1955, and then what they thought or considered the last migration, which is in like 1972 area. I say which they thought because there is another migration that's been happening the last 20, 25 years, which is the reverse migration. we're Black folk that are descendants of Black Southern life and people have been going back to the South, right? So I look at it from 1945 to 2004, from the birth of my parents and the movement of my grandparents to the birth of my children, nephews, and nieces, who had the opportunity to interact with their grandparents. Why is that important? Why is the children of my generation, why is it important for them, or why is the relationship between them and my generation's parents, why is that important to the blues narrative? Because we are looking at traditions, cultures, folklore, life ways, expressions, everything that traveled from Mississippi, Louisiana, the Delta, throughout the Americas. So that means what I was taught by my grandparents, who taught my parents, my children was taught by their grandparents. So that's about a good 3-4 generations of information, right? Of interactions, of maybe not identified, but agreed upon communications that flourished, lived in a different space. And that's what the blues narrative is pretty much consisted of. And I show, I'm sure that one later. I show this picture because, again, when we're speaking of the treatment of Blacks and how the idea of marginalization of Black Southerners, the migration itself, all of this stems from land and labor. And one of the most intensive labor industries was the cotton industry, right? So for the blues people, movement wasn't just physical. What I'm telling you, it was culture and cultural. Now, I want to, as we're going into this, I want to play an excerpt from one of these interviews. I want to start with Sister Nashima Harvey. All right. And again, we're going to be discussing quite a few things during this time. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Absolutely. It is my opinion that a divide is the economic situation, meaning it's economically satisfying to someone if we set up, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm working, everyone is there for the same reason. We're all there for common ground of education, to be honest with you. That platform was already set up for me. And so it makes it a little easier than when we're talking about this life, because you have some people who truly believe that they're not in a contained room forced to be there to hear me. Those people were. You're not forced to listen to me, because you don't have to. You can walk away when we're in the street. If I'm at a protest and I'm talking, you can walk away. You don't have to hear me,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not forced to deal with that situation. People don't seem to, you can't even say with children, because people don't even think that Black children hurt or feel pain the way white children do. Children feel pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, right? And so I don't expect, I'm really of the mindset that it does start at home, yes, but in school, when you're in school, this stuff is not just homeschool and our friends on the street. It's everywhere. It can be advertised on TV. It's like you're bombarded with so much. It reminds me of when my sons were young and, they were going through that hormonal phase. And we walked into the mall, and I didn't realize how many damn near half-naked women were everywhere in boosters.
Right.
And I was like, oh, my God, they're everywhere. and then we had to leave the mall.
Wow.
But that's what it's like. It's what it's like, dealing with racism and how it's inside, woven through our system, our cultural system of being Americans in this country. So my daughter is 8, so maybe when she was 6, we were walking past, it was prom season 2 years ago, and she saw the store that was prom dresses, and she looked. Now, I'm her mother, so she would say something like this. She looked and she was like, "There's no black people in the poster." And I'm like, "No." She's like, "That's a problem. Black people like to go to prom too." She didn't think, "Oh, wow, those girls are just really pretty." Yeah, she thought they were pretty, but she also noticed no one looked like her. But that's been like that forever, right?
That's right.
It's just what we've accepted. It's just what it is. We don't make mention. We only make the mention when it starts to start with the knee on the neck. But it's happened way before that, and not even through violence, because to me, that is violence, not showing me what looks like me or what's reflected in this society. It would be different if we lived in an area that was predominantly one thing only, right?
Right.
And so that's what we saw. But we don't. But even if we did, the damage you're doing to those children who are all white and not showing them something different, you're creating those monsters.
That's correct.
So I hope you heard and were able to understand what Mrs. Harvey was describing. Mrs. Harvey, Nashim, a good sister of the Pearley family, is an educator, and she also goes to school to counsel or consult with faculty on how to better teach, I guess, communicate to Black and brown children. And this is very important. And this goes back to, so I spoke about this brother's book, right? This book is very important because this book discusses the power of the plantation, the industry of the plantation. And now if you're listening to what Ms. Nashima was saying, you would know that in the process of her statement and or discussion, she's talking about the selling of Black bodies, the omission of Black people, period, and then the idea that they don't think Black children feel pain, or the idea that their Black children or people, for that matter, are not human. And these are concepts that, and you heard her say these are not new concepts. So now I bring up that book along with the blues narrative, which I shared with y'all last week. I'm developing this idea called the blues ecology. Dr. Woods has blues epistemology, right? So now when you're thinking about the plantation and you're thinking about how the system throughout the years evolved and repurposed itself, then you want to think about how Indian removal, reclassification of dark-hued Indians who become Negroes and Black to African American, Black American, and Africans mixed in there, right? Dark-hued people of the South being removed from their land. But, and I spoke about this last week, I believe, but I'll bring it back up because there's a point I'm getting to. The idea that these plantation owners and Southern bankers came together, labor dispute, right? Came together, and because the poor, and remember, labor songs, work songs, poor Blacks, poor whites were working together. these two entities, plantation owners and northern bankers, figured out how to divide them. We spoke about Tim Wise, who speaks about this often, but there's more to it, way more to it. So what they do is, okay, well, let's separate poor whites and poor blacks by giving poor whites this, or at least the illusion that they're getting this. And in doing that, subsidies are made because the New Deal created angry plantation owners. So they started giving rewards to white farm owners who shrank their acreage, so blacks wouldn't be able to share crop. And I do this because sharecropping, I think I mentioned this last week and several times. Early in my research, when I looked up sharecropping, I didn't find black folk, I found white folk. And I think I said this as well, I'll just say it again. What you'll find is this idea of squatting. Sharecroppers who become squatters, which was another strategy to remove the whole blacks from their land, lynching. So all these things helped force what is the Great Migration. And then now when you're listening to Sister Nashima, and she's explaining how when she's walking with her daughter or her sons or her kids in these spaces, these are the results. And mind you, the plantation industry, this is not 20th century. This is not just in the 1900s. This is in the 18, 17, 1600s. Right? So do you see the connection? And then the blues, of course, reflects this. Hip hop reflects this. Blues reflects it first. And not only first, even more directly, because it is those who were living these things that were actually playing the music. And I remember everybody has this humongous nostalgia for Dockery Plantation. Oh, Charlie Patton. Oh, Howlin' Wolf. Oh, Son House went through there. Oh, they have this nostalgia for Dockery Farms. It's a plantation. But the point I'm making when I bring it up, it informed song style, song topic, right? Let's move on. I want to get to Chief Warhorse. Now, mind you, if y'all have any questions and any statements you want to bring, please, this is not just me talking at you all. This is a conversation after the conversation. You know what I mean? If you know something, if I miss something, if you think something, if you have a question. So I'm going to play a snippet of and mind you, y'all, not my people, but these other people, y'all got to stop. You got to stop this. Just because I had the honor to speak with the Honorable Chief, or I had the honor to speak with the Honorable Mr. Walto, that has nothing to do with who they are, where they come from. And it's really a shame. It's just a shame. Let's get into this.
A Confederate soldier who helped remove the Indians. While everybody put turn over statue, turn your statue over, turn it over in your head, and think. Symbolically turn it over, then physically change your ways. Oliver Howard was a Confederate soldier who helped him and a lot of his Confederate friends. And I don't understand how Confederate soldiers end up being some of the top people assisting the United States with the removal of the melanated Indians. And it was open for black
ministers to be going in and train people who look like us to preach to us that God wanted us to let the white folks have our stuff. You're not saying that, Mr. Pearley. Sister Pearley, I'm closing on this one. Because I'm not going to go there and let the scholars attack me, because I just said about they got Oliver Howard's signature on their diploma, and they have not taught you who Oliver Howard was, because most of them don't know who he was. I thought Howard University was a black university, founded by black for black, till I started studying a man named Albert Pike, who was the founder, top man of the Ku Klux Klan organization out of Arkansas, who also had a fort named after him, who also was a part of the removal and the organization and the survey of Oklahoma Territory for the Indians. Come on now. Now let's go and see. Sister Pearley, pull up Oliver Howard.
Miss Pearley, Sister Pearley, pull up Oliver Howard. Pull that name up.
Oliver Howard?
Yes.
And you know what? Mr. Pearley, I want you to send me a copy of this audio that we just did.
You know I will. Soon as I stop recording, which will be after Mrs. Pearley reads this, we'll talk off air, okay?
Okay, and I'm going to say on air so that it be legal tender. You have my right to play this, okay? What we have recorded tonight.
Thank you very
Chief
much.
Warhorse said that. So you can let that part play so they can hear. I say you can play this. But let's see who Oliver Howard is. Because we get on these Sunday school books, we're saying the same thing, going to every school, in every black church. And we never thought about the printing press was owned by the Klan. That the school that taught black preachers about the Bible was owned and controlled by the Klan. We better rethink. Yes, there is a God. And yes, the church has been our foundation. And the reason you have survived with all the misleading and misguiding in your Christianity is because God Almighty was waiting on the day that we wake up, that his word had been twisted, turned, flipped, but never told the way it was to be. Oliver Howard, let's see what he was set up to be.
Okay, go ahead, read it, please.
I found some info on Wikipedia. He was a Confederate Army General of the United States. He lost one arm. He was an evangelical petty. He was in charge of the Freedmen's Bureau in the mid-1865 with the mission of integrating the former slaves into Southern society and politics during the second phase of the Reconstruction era. Howard took charge of labor policy, setting up a system that required free people to work or former plantation land under pay scales fixed by the Bureau on terms of negotiated by the Bureau with white land owners. He attempted to protect freed blacks from hostile conditions, but lacked adequate power and was repeatedly frustrated by President Andrew Jackson. His allies were the radical Republicans who won the control of the Congress in 1866 elections and imposed racial reconstruction with the result that freedmen were given to vote. Where do you want me to go down to? Howard was a leader in the promoting higher education for freedmen, most notably in founding Howard University in Washington and serving as its president from 1867 to 1873.
That's right. Did you hear her, Chief?
So listen, he was over the Freedmen. He's the founder and leader over what it was called the Freedmen's Bureau.
Yeah.
Over the former slaves.
Correct.
All right. Now, what is this man name on black people's diploma? Why? That's who he is. A Confederate soldier. So some people got to tear their diploma up to get rid of the stature that they done earned. That everywhere they put their resume, they came through Howard University.
On the university.
Am I right, Joe?
No, you're very right. Very
So
right.
is not that still a form of a statue or a monument? If his name is on your diploma, he lives on. And his message lives on.
Well, yeah. I mean, their curriculum is his message, and he's.
So I have to stop it there. Forgive me. Thank you, Honorable Chief Warhorse. I have to stop it there because that is something very, very, very important. Because we speak about, and I might go back to Mr. Walto, but that is something that's very, very important that we got to remember. And this is something that we're discussing and fighting for years in my discipline and field. And I'll tell you something, there are people who are, they've been addressing it, right? So I don't want to make it sound like it's not being addressed. However, you have to look at the situation where you are being informed and taught by the same people who worked to disenfranchise you and even kill you in some instances, right? So now what Chief was saying falls in line back again to what I'm starting to call this plantation. What's a good word? The stench of plantation? I don't know. However, until I come up with a name of that, what I can tell you is this is part of the blues narrative. Because she's explaining what happened to the blues people, but more so, and what I love about the series and what I love about the people that I spoke to and who I will be speaking to, they've all approached it from a different way. Chief is approaching it from factamundos. Absolutely, Mrs. Pearley. Chief is naming names and then giving you examples of how they tied and tripped us up with the renaming and the reframe. Like if you think of gentrification, right? When they rezone communities, they rename these communities, which breaks up what the community had going on. Well, you know what? Let's just go. It breaks up the resources the community was getting, the area. Now, when I'm saying community in this instance, I'm not using it ambiguously, like just like I'm talking about the neighborhood, the region, the zone, if you will. So a lot of these communities, a lot of these areas, a lot of these neighborhoods are rezoned, renamed, recategorized, reclassified the way they did the people. So what that does is it shifts the resources. And guess what? That is a product, a strategy, the prototype of plantation industry and the repurposing of how this book here, let me show you guys. Get this book, okay? I'll show you another book to get since we're on it. I think I told you this last week. Get this book. Sorry, it's messy because I've read this book many times, and I was talking about. Well, before we get to that, let me just give you a couple of more books to read. Okay, here's another book that informs on that. Okay. Well, just in case I read Capitalism and Slavery, okay? And again, another book that I read often. Well, it's just that when I say read often, that's where I cite a lot from the books that you see is Torah. And this one is called All God's Children. Okay, and All God's Children is an interesting book because what it's about is the first juvenile child to be tried as an adult who happened to be a black in New York, in Harlem, if I'm not mistaken. He's from in New York, and The writer, Fox, I believe his name is. Yeah, Fox Butterfield was a journalist and was given the assignment to do a story on this. If I'm not mistaken, his editor was a Black woman whose book I have over here. And I want to talk about that book too, because that book, matter of fact, I don't want to get up and get it, but I will give you guys the name of that book, because that book is about the migration. But what's interesting about that book was he went to interview this young man, or he was doing a story about this young man, and it turned out that he ended up chronicling multiple generations of this young man's life. Like, how did this 16-year-old become who he became? What happened in his life? And he goes all the way back to South Carolina, and the framing of South Carolina through Scottish and Irish folk who were sent over, and what they dealt with over there and came over here, and then how they gained power of this area, and what happened to Blacks. You know, it's a very interesting story. And when you cross-reference these things, you start to see everyone doesn't frame it the same way, right? But you will see that there were legal and intentional happenings that disenfranchised the indigenous of this land, the darker hued indigenous of this land, as well as dark hued and brown hued across the globe, right? These aren't isolated things, but my interest, and when I say interest, scholarship, my blues people, we're talking about the Americas, right? So let's move on to the next person. I think I'm gonna share Mr. Walter again, but I want to share Troy Pearley's interview, because all of these things are results. And what I didn't get to last week, I may have to wait and get to it, because I want to set it up and present it to you. I've done multiple lectures on the blues narrative. I was saying that my first time doing that lecture and first time I ever presented it was at the American Folk Life Society. I believe it is. I've also had the honor to do it at a conference at Western Kentucky University. And I also did it for my advisors at the time, okay? So I will probably present that talk next week, so I can kind of give you guys, you know, because I did an entire article that was featured in the Journal of American Folklore. And I want to share that with you, so you guys can understand where I'm coming from and what informs the blues narrative for me. I might even read you the abstract, but before we get to all of that, check this out.
Brick and mortar, there's no places for them to work. Communities are destroyed. Come on, Jack. Me and you old enough. I mean, you were younger. I'm a couple years older than you. When I was a kid, Broadway between, let's say, for argument's sake, Ralph Avenue, and we talk in Brooklyn, to Sumner Avenue, was like Pickens Avenue. It was a store every other door, barbershop, the vibrant community. That Black House hit 77, 78. And after that blackout, I walked down Broadway with our grandmother. It looked like a ghost town. Everything was burnt out. Now with gentrification, because you know how they play around with zone things, the new Bushwick or Williamsburg or whatever it is.
Right.
Now that place is vibrant, but it's 2020. So it didn't stop becoming vibrant until the last, let's say, to be on the aggressive side the last 5-6 years. So for 25, 30, well, longer than that, for 40 years, that strip been out of business. My question is, with all of this looting and stuff, some of these communities have to wait 30, 40 years for it to be resurrected?
This is the $1 million question, because even prior to this, that's how Detroit's been sitting for some time. amongst
Okay,
other
so let's
places.
make that number 3 on the list then. What's the objective and what's the end game? So we want federal reform with policing nationally. We want the jail reform, because we know that's messed up the structure of the family. And the third thing, we want to ensure that these communities are going to be rebuilt speedily, which is really loaded, because now we're dealing with real estate and redlining. So number 3 is really a hot one. Number 3, maybe, yeah.
So
So
now,
those are the 3 things I would say. Yeah.
I agree with that, but my question would be, so now with that being said, who is the representative? You know, at one time our representatives were very well-read and educated men and women. Now our representatives are, I'll just say they're not to that level, right? They do other things well. Right, but not. So who is the representatives that will do that? And again, for you personally, for you and your household personally, how does that affect you guys?
Well, I mean, fortunately enough, and I don't want to even speak too fast, but the damage that's been done in Brooklyn is not in close proximity. But the answer to your question is, those local guys have to be held accountable that we have in the office. And, you know, I have to encourage all of the people in the community to attend those community meetings at the schools, where there's police representation, where there's the local district representation. And it has to be done at a local level, you know. To your point, years ago, local representatives walked around the community. Everybody knew their name. I mean, hell, even on good times, it was a joke that the guy didn't walk around until it was election time. But they knew who he was.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, I mean, we used to see these guys walking around our area, and they would stop and talk to us while we drank beers.
I couldn't even get the brother that was murdered correct. There's many nights that we spoke to that guy in Crown Heights correct. So these local guys, and then you know, you got to go to the elders. I mean, Green is still in Crown Heights. And, you know, you got to humble yourself and seek guidance and talk to the elders on how to move around and, you know, and how to walk around and, you know, get to the Gary Birds and all of the people, the Bernard Whites that's been in the community for years and talking on public radio and been telling us that cops are going upside people's heads. And everything that they said is coming to fruition. It's now recorded. We all see this. Go to those guys while we still have them and ask them questions and learn how to organize and, you know, and just do things from a community standpoint, you know, and hold each other accountable. I mean, we have to hold each other accountable also.
So again, one of the main reasons why I'm sharing these interviews. Oh, my head got crazy real quick. One of the reasons why I'm sharing these interviews is because I want you guys to have an understanding of what the blues narrative is. And then I want you guys to have an understanding of the age range of the people, and then with their experiences and how that informs them. And those experiences come from a generation of folk that raised us, right? Children of the Great Migration. So now I just want to point out jail reform. That's one of the things my brother spoke of. He spoke of several things that we've been talking about, right? Reframing neighborhoods, right? It's ironic that I didn't even realize that was what he spoke about in that excerpt before I played it, when that's what I was literally just talking about. But when we talk about jail reform, and I started out discussing, right? Yeah, my hair looks crazy, but it's not about my hair, about me. This is about the blues narrative and the blues people. Rest in peace, Brother Dixon and Mr. Freeman. When we talk about jail reform, and I spoke about this earlier in this broadcast, we got to remember what informs that. if you think about the songs that of our old, we're talking about Mississippi Jailhouse Farm and Mississippi State Parchment's Farm and things of this nature. These are extensions of plantation industry. And then you get to the 80s where you're getting songs from Cool G Rap about Riker Island, or you're getting songs by Annie Kamosi about I'm Stepping in Hotter this year. You got to understand when we discuss these where these things come from. This is what the blues narrative is for. But this is what I want you guys to, and I just want to play the blues, but we're talking about it tonight. Speaking of which, I need you all to go to our Patreon page and sign the bleep up as a paid Patreon, because I got a project coming up, okay? And for you to have access to the inner workings of this project, which some of you who are already Patreons know about, you have to be a paid member of the Patreon, okay? You'll also, as a paid member of Patreon, Jack Dappa Blues Reflexive Podcast, where I discuss my work in the field or my writing work or whatever that comes in, how I feel about it, if I thought I did good, if I thought I did horribly, what I think about the discipline. Okay? Now, I have not put new ones up yet because I challenged you all as a great audience. If I can get 20 paid subscription Patreons, then I would commit to putting up what I've promised. But you guys got to, don't just help me, you're helping the other members that is waiting for the content. We need y'all because, this costs. You can also sponsor these episodes. It's not there because we got the new issue just about to hit of the African American Folklorist, just about to hit the shelves. You can get sponsor ads there and everything. Okay, for that. Okay. Oh yeah, I mean. We do the work. Okay, it's okay. Even exchange. It's okay. It's okay. Right? So understand a lot of this, I'll always refer to Mr. Walter. He's like, yo, man, you play the blues, you listen to the blues, you know what's going on. Follow the lyrics. A lot of people, and it's really ironic because the idea, and this goes back to something when I was discussing Sister Nashima and I was and Chief Warhorse and those who teach and inform us. It's the same thing with those who teach and inform us about the blues and the blues people. Because we're taught that these are very primitive-minded, inarticulate men and women. But these are some of the smartest intellectuals, maybe not Western standard intellectuals. But if you listen to what they're singing about and what they're talking about, and some of these folk were avid readers. I read something, this guy is, I guess he was making a case of how special Robert Johnson is, which is fine. But in doing that, he was also disrespecting Son House. Like, this is just some guy who murdered somebody. And blah, blah, it's like, really? Really? He's not just some guy who murdered somebody. He was a minister at 15 years old. Somebody who something happened to. He was somebody who complicated, but understood certain things, because after he finished playing the blues all night, he would stand up on that bar and preach the word Sunday morning. A lot of times, as you and I know, and I repeat this all the time, the Jew and the church was in the same location, because that's plantation life. It's the blues. What informs the blues. What my grandparents experienced as they migrated and then migrated, what my parents experienced through their migration informs how I maneuvered. Southern values. The kitchen being not just the pharmacy, not just the doctor's office, but the kitchen also being a university, also being where we hold forum, the exchange of ideas. This is the blues narrative, right? So now, when you're listening to also how, and my brother mentioned this, at one time, he and our grandmother went to a particular area and shopped, and it was very busy, if you will, in a good way. The circulation of communal income and economy and different things of this nature. And then all of a sudden, it's desolate. It's not just in Brooklyn. This is in Clarksdale. This is in Ohio. We can go across the United States. But again, this is part of plantation, the residue, the remnant of how plantation industry was repurposed. Again, informing the blues people, and how we maneuver and how we look at people, how we react towards things. Brother Marquise Knox was part of this, and what is very interesting about my brother Marquise is he referred to as a revolutionary bluesman. I tell him this all the time, so I'm not saying nothing that I never said to him. When his blues career is over, he's going to be a pastor in the church, not a musician. He's going to be a bishop or a pastor in a black church in the backwoods, so he can hoot and holler. He's a conscious black man right here. And I think it was my first African traditional music history and a Black experience event at AFS, where he was Marquise Knox, Professor Harp, and my brother Jock Webb, Mr. Jock Webb. All three of them are my brothers, actually. Told you this is a blues fraternity. And this was during, now again, let me just give you guys, those who are just listening for the first time, because you may not, if you didn't listen last week, the blues narrative gets its start during COVID. And during COVID, there was civil unrest because of the Black individuals murdered. Okay? I mean, I can go through the names of all these people. Yes, all these people. But I just want to give you this context. So what happens is our annual festival was remote, and Marquise performs a song that he wrote because of what was going on. Again, we're in civil unrest. I wrote a song too, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about Marquise Knox. And he performs this song, and someone from AFS reaches out and said, "Hey, Lamont, we're doing this special issue that you're in. Could we get Marquise's lyrics in there?" So as long as, we have some stipulations, and yes, it's there. Dr. Ebony Bailey is part of that as well. That's my sister. Big up, big up. So I end up interviewing Brother Marquise, and he did a couple of interviews during the lockdown, if you will. But we got an opportunity, and I want to read some of what my brother said in this interview, okay? So Marquise Knox, a panelist in the session I chaired in 2020 for the annual meeting of the American Folklore Society titled African American Traditional Music Practitioners, History and a Black Experience, shared a song called You or Me, which is published in this issue of the Journal of American Folklorists, encapsulating the emotions of the blues people. On acoustic guitar, Knox begins the verse saying, "Now I know you seen the cops that man, I messed it up. I'll repeat it. This is the lyric. Now I know you seen the cops kill that man in the streets." That is the very first line, and that's how it starts. That enough gets the attention of anyone from any ethnicity, because we all have seen that cop kill that man in the street. We all have the image staying in our sight. This is my writing in my piece for the Journal of American Folklore, but it's setting up my interview with the brother Marquise, okay? And what like I said, I may end up reading to you all the abstract before this is over. This episode. The one thing about the blues people, our tradition calls for a soundtrack to our experiences. Good or bad, unfortunately, in many cases, it has been a history of watching the cops kill that unarmed Black man in the street. This constant narrative deeply affects blues people. COVID-19, quarantine, and civil unrest also affects us. And for musicians, it has hurt their finances. Knox is a St. Louis blues musician, and here's an excerpt from our interview. Okay? So what I ask him is, he goes deep into so many things, but I want to go with this one here. What I asked him was, there has been a study saying that by 2050, the Black median income, mind you, I skipped some of the interview to get to this part, okay? Just so you all know, okay? This is my question to Marquise. There has been a study saying that by 2050, the Black median income will be zero. Currently, it looks like Black people are not the only group of people falling victim to this. Even though with the terrain we are in and all these legislations and things like this, it looks like they are lobbying for a whole host of other people. Nevertheless, let us stick to the blues people. What are some things that you would suggest or would do for yourself individually, community-wise, and then collectively for Black folks to survive? And here goes what Brother Marquis says. I think one thing, starting on a personal level, my plan is to start buying property, dilapidated properties, and in the parts of the neighborhood where nobody is buying, making it a ghost town. The building may need to be torn down, true enough, but to purchase this stuff, we have to figure out how to house each other first. When we eliminate that, then we can move on and talk about how we feed each other and take care of each other. The number one thing we have to figure out, how we're going to house each other. We know that money is not going to be around and everything steady going up and then moving into a collective neighborhood. I'm using Queen Latifah as an example. Queen went back to Newark. She got a couple of investors and she built some apartment buildings. That's good. That's how you change when you know you've got the money in your pocket to do something for Black people. Now, you ain't got to buy them a Cadillac. You ain't got to get a Chevrolet. But you can say, man, I'm in the top 10% of Black people, or I'm the brother who's hustling in the streets. Man, I'm the brother on stage. I'm the sister on stage. Look at the money we're making. Man, we could go back there and get 2 or 3 pieces of property, together and make a community. We can house our people cheaper or put mothers in these places or try to find more Black families to put in these places. And there are certain things that we could do. Me and my cousin was talking about the need to have car lots for single parents. So now, the interview goes way longer, but what Brother Marquise is suggesting is how we respond to, fight against strategies to disable the remnants of plantation industries and what it did to us. See, you have to understand, well, you do understand, or do you? I'll give you a few more. This was a little deeper than before. I think it's worth hearing Brother Walter again before we call it a night and before I celebrate a little bit more of Dr. Dixon, BHD blues physician, because all of these things matter when it comes to the blues narrative, but it also matters as we understand how we got in this situation in the first place. But it also matters today and now. So you don't think it matters today and now, but it actually matters more today and now than it almost ever did. Because some of the people that you co-sign or invest in, vote for, what have you, they've profited off of the plantation industry. And they are part of the repurposing and repackaging of it. The same way the blues was repurposed, repackaged, and sold back to Blacks with white faces on it. More importantly, British faces. And because remember, at one time, American whites and American Blacks and American Afro-Indigenous fighting alongside each other. That carrot dangling, that trail of tears, that disenfranchisement. Let's listen to Brother Walter.
So we're in June 2020. 2020 started off real weird. At the end of 2019, maybe from September to October, there was threats and talk of a World War III. There was a couple of assassinations and missile launches. And by the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, we were told, I believe, by Iran or Syria that America was going to pay. During that time, and a little bit before, there was a virus allegedly starting in China and making its rounds through Russia. Well, I don't think it hit Russia, but it hit Italy, it hit Iran and other places in the so-called Middle East. and then it made its ways to the Americas, right? Better known as Turtle Island, if I'm not mistaken. And and right now, in the midst of a pandemic, what could be considered a soft lockdown, a quarantine, we have witnessed and are experiencing national civil unrest for the killing of a black man. This is the Blues Narrative, Volume 1. I've been speaking to dark and brown-hued people, melanated people of the Americas, and I'm speaking to what was once referred to as a Estelusi, and now that which means black man. I'm speaking to a black Seminole. I believe the term is First American. And we're going to right? That's the term, right, Brother Walto?
Well, it's First American if you're in Canada.
So what's the term here?
American Indian.
Okay. So let's, before we get into what's going on right now, which I'm sure you'll be able to share with us, this is not a first of all the stuff that we're experiencing, correct?
No. You have to. This started back in, around 18, 19, 18, 20. With the Indian Removal Act. So see, that's what we actually suffered under, is the Indian Removal Act. When you went from being an Indian to being assimilated.
Assimilated into European culture or the new United States?
Well, now, where is the dividing line between the two?
Please.
Because, see, there ain't actually a dividing line between the two of them. They're the same people. The United States didn't lose their European concepts or structure much, but they did learn from us. Because you take, like, even the Constitution of the United States, that came from the Iroquois, or the Six Nations Pact, is where they got it from. The Europeans didn't have that much education or intelligence when they got here to even set up nothing that looks like this. So they took what was already here and stuck their name on it and claimed that they did. But that's not exactly what the history books don't tell you.
No.
Remember now, when you so-called white folks, and I use that term specifically because there is really no such thing as a white or a black person, and you can actually trace the date of the birth of the white people as a separate entity in this country. That has a birth date. They didn't come here being white Europeans. If you go back to the Immigration Act of 1870, you will quickly see that Caucasians and Aryans were not considered free white people in the United States in 1870. Another thing, which I find completely hilarious, is these people that claim that they were free had to have a revolutionary war talking about we want to be free. Now, when you ever heard of a free man talking about he want to be free?
You know, let's stay there for a minute.
Okay.
Because that's one of the most ironic and mistaught happenings on this land.
No, now let me slow you down there.
Okay.
Because that's really not the most important thing that they left out. What they left out is what happened in the Americas after, North America. What happened in North America after King Philip's War, Metacon. Because after King Philip's War is when you started seeing American Indians actually being sold into the slave market.
And this is what where we get the quote unquote domestic slave trade.
Yeah, that's what they called it.
Right, that's what they called it.
It was a kidnapping operation. If you was to ask me how it really looked, they were snatching up folks wherever they found them and just selling them off. And when
So the reason why I stopped there, besides the fact that we're about to come to a close, is he said it was a kidnapping operation. That they were snatching people off the street. And I spoke about this many times. In all these books here that I mentioned and others that I will make them available, but the titles I'll make available as we go on. This is how this plantation industry worked for the plantation owners and what we can in the northern bakers, but also poor whites, which became white. They weren't white initially. The idea of the Georgia man that I always talk about. So these and the Georgia man becomes like the boogeyman that you tell your kids in this era, if you don't behave, the Georgia man come to get you. The Georgia man comes through, snatching up blacks free, didn't matter. I have the book over here. I have I don't want to knock anything over, but 12 years a slave. He was not only a free black man, but he was an educated black man, and he was well respected in his community. We gotta understand. And when I say community, again, I mean his region, his area, his neighborhood, where he was from. He would walk into a store owned by a white family, and they would refer to him as Mr. And by chance, he gets kidnapped and sold into slavery because the idea of one of the repurposing of the plantation, when they saw the populists, I think they were called. And again, there's a book called Dry Bones, just over here. Speak about that all the time. I believe they were called the populists. When these guys, I may be jumping too far ahead, but the group of white and black farmers that was fighting the plantation system, as plantation owners and northern bankers was trying to figure out how to dead this union, and not for anything other than it was annoying to them. Poor whites started figuring out in some cases they can profit off this industry as well. So if they couldn't afford a slave, they captured one. Bounty hunter. Hellhounds on my trail. So the reason why I'm making that point is because Waldo said it was a kidnapping operation. So that means those who are being kidnapped, you see what I'm saying? So I believe next week what I probably would do is give you the full layout. Well, we're talking about the blues narrative. We're giving, I guess, examples and how that ties into next week. What I'll do is give you the full idea and presentation. Now, it'll mention some of these folks that you heard some of their interviews, and maybe I'll play other excerpts. But I want to talk about how the 80s and what happened during that time informs the blues narrative. Again, I'm very intentional about 1945 to 2004. I explained it at the beginning. And if you don't want to drop it in the comments now, at some point drop it in one of the comments. I really need you all to subscribe to the YouTube channel, share all of this content. I also need you all to go to our Patreon and become a paid member, okay? So, yeah, because we need you to do that. We need you to do that, okay? So next week, what I'm going to do is give the presentation of the blues narrative and how different moments in, actually, the presentation will be breaking down the article that I wrote, which is Blues Narrative, COVID-19 in like this, which is which is the actual first, and it's something that I've been developing for some time, but that was the first time it was introduced to the world. And these snippets that I shared with you are interviews that also helped inform how the blues narrative is going to move. So come back and check that out. But before we go, I have to again honor our brother, Dr. Dixon, BHD, the blues physician, who was born September 9th, 1947. Okay, September 9th, 1947. I'm happy you learned a lot, young fella. I'm very happy you learned a lot. Yeah, thank you, little lady. So I want to honor my brother before we take off. And I want to play a piece that he posted. And he was playing out with a slide. All right? And he was playing out with a slide. Dr. Dixon, you're loved, brother. And for y'all, thank you for riding with us. I will see you next week. Same blues time, same blues channel. And we just going to talk them blues. Now, we're going to play them blues too, because I plays them. We all play them. Told this fraternity. All right, y'all. Have a great night. All right. Take care.